Hi, I'm Mary Mancini, the person who opened the record store and all-ages punk venue, Lucy's Record Shop in Nashville about 30 years ago. This podcast is where you can hear stories from the kids who hung out and played in bands at the shop. It was a special time, and these are really special people. 2022 is the 30th anniversary of when Lucy's opened, and we're going to get together and celebrate this month with a live music event at Dark Matter and a screening of the documentary Lucy Barks at the Belcourt Theater. The screening of Lucy Barks will be on Monday, September 12th as part of the Belcourt's Music City Monday series, and tickets are available at belcourt.org. I'm going to be recording a live podcast that night with the director, Stacey Goldate, who was just a college student when she made the film in 1996. Then on Sunday, September 18th at Dark Matter, there will be an all-day music festival with a mixture of reunited bands and some new bands, and then some new bands whose members played Lucy's in other bands back in the day. Go to lucysrecordshop.com/anniversary for more info and to get tickets. We're also working on setting up a live stream of the event for those who can't make it to the show, and we will have a way that you can record your favorite Lucy story for a future episode of this podcast. One of the kids who was a fixture at Lucy's is Dallas Thomas. Dallas was introduced to the punk scene in Nashville in the 90s when he was just 14 years old by Jeff Andrews, another kid who wasn't that much older, but who quickly became a musical mentor to Dallas. Once Dallas knew about the scene, he was hooked, and he and his friends from school and the neighborhood, including Jonathan Morell and brothers Roger and Erik Holcombe, started coming to Lucy's all the time. And then they formed bands, and the band started playing at Lucy's all the time. Dallas and his friends, James Fooch, Ben Johnson, and Mark Cooley, started Blend, which became Fingerhutt. Jonathan, Roger, and Erik started Fecal Matter, then added Dallas on guitar, and they changed the name to High Strung. Then came the other projects, Dry Heave, Brown Cow, Little Monkey on a Stick, and Boobyhatch, to name a few. Dallas was such a little kid when he first started playing live shows that he wasn't even strong enough to lift his own amp, and his dad had to help him. This episode is mainly about Dallas's musical journey and his time at Lucy's, which he says gave him and all the young musicians a goal to work towards, a creative outlet, and a broader horizon. But it's also about what happened after Lucy's, how Dallas and Erik Holcombe, John Roberson, and Chris Fox formed the band Asschapel, and how over the course of 7 years played all over the Western world, even once meeting a dude in Bosnia who was their version of House of Pain's Don Kendall. It's about the post-Asschapel days, which for Dallas included a short time volunteering for a Hurricane Katrina relief organization, which sadly left him disillusioned with the way our society works, and then finding his way to music again, and once more touring the country and the world, but this time with the experimental post-metal band Pelican. It's also about where Dallas is now musically, exploring his hardcore roots as a member of Ready for Death, a new band set to release their first record in December. But this episode is also about family and parenthood. One of the things we were most proud of back 30 years ago was that parents felt Lucy's was a safe enough place to drop off their kids, even if the people who went there looked and dressed a little, quote-unquote, weird and dangerous. But then there were parents like Dallas's dad, Bill, who took it to the next level. Bill was one of the parents who let their kids have really loud band practice at his house. He was one of the parents who paid for and took their kid to guitar lessons. He was one of the parents who helped load in equipment. He was one of the parents who stayed for the shows, discreetly standing in the back of the room, allowing their kids to do their thing, but always keeping a proud and watchful eye. At the end of each of these interviews, I always ask if there's something we didn't get to that the guest wants to talk about. Everyone usually says no, but Dallas surprised me and he said yes. But I wasn't surprised when what he wanted to talk about was his dad.
My name's Dallas Thomas. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I live in Chicago now. I've been in Chicago for 14 years. I just kind of moved here on a whim, and then, yeah, time flies.
Well, I want to ask you about that, but let's kind of try to go in chronological order, because I do want to know why you moved away. But there's so much that happened in between all of that, right? Like,
yeah.
And I was going through all the calendars today, trying to piece together your history. So you're going to have to help me out a little bit.
Yeah, when you like I said, when you asked me the list of bands I've been in, I was like, I don't even know. Like, do ones that actually release something, or is it just ones that were attempted? That list is going to be pretty long.
yeah, I know. So that's good. That's okay, because I think I pieced together some of it, and we'll fill in the rest of it. But I guess my first question for you is, when did you pick up a guitar and why?
I was probably around 10. My dad always kind of had guitars and stuff around. And he was always playing records and playing music and stuff. I probably picked it up around 10, but I didn't really take it seriously. I got a few lessons and whatnot. Maybe 13, I started getting a little more interest, but when I turned 14 is when I really started practicing, and I met those guys that ended up kind of turning into Fingerhutt. Like we all went to school together. That's when I really started to practice, get better equipment. And
what changed when you were 14? What, did something just click?
I remember one day I was riding the bus, and this kid got on the bus and he had a guitar, which is Mark Cooley. And he sat next to James, which he normally didn't ride our bus. We rode the same bus, but we really never talked that much. Like, we kind of went to school, but we weren't in the same classes. Like we never, and this would probably been about I think it was like the end of 7th grade. I think it was like the last day or something. And Mark had gotten on, he had like a skater haircut, and he brought his guitar, and he didn't normally ride the bus. And I was like, hey man, I got guitar too, and kind of struck up a conversation with them. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, and then they got off the bus at James's house and they were going to jam. And I was like, well, I got a guitar, I want to jam. And somehow we connected, and I went over and jammed with them after that. And I think I really remember went to James. James had his drums in his house, and hearing, I guess, drums that loud in a room. I had this little PV amp and my guitar and my mullet, and I like go in there and it's hearing him playing so loud. And I had that little PV amp, and I just had it cranked, and it wouldn't keep up with his drums. And I was like, man, I need a louder amp. And it's just like, that's really where it started, where it was just like, oh my God, that sounds so awesome, but my amp needs to be bigger, And so now the arsenal that I have today kind of started right. That was the moment to hearing drums, someone who could really play drums, or at least, at the time, keep a beat. And that would have been when I didn't care about sports. I didn't care about video games. That was kind of the moment I would imagine. And so the three of us started just regularly jamming. And then Ben, he lived across the street from Mark. And so this kind of ties on to how he kind of got into Lucy's or shows and all that. Was, I think James's parents didn't want us jamming there. It was too loud. And so Mark, that's what it was. Mark was like, we can come jam at my house in my basement. My dad, he took me over there, my amp, and I finally gotten a little bit bigger of an amp. And I remember we had one riff. It was just like one riff. And we're like, man, we got a song. And it was just like, it's probably like 3 notes. And we're just playing that one riff over and over, and like recording it on a boombox. And Mark's brother, he walked down the stairs and was like, you guys suck. You guys are a bunch of posers. And I remember like, what do you mean, man? We're cool. And he's like, no. I was like, what's a poser? It's like, you guys, you need to come up you need to come up here and listen to some real stuff. And so we go up in their room and he starts playing like Bolt Thrower and Napalm Death and Obituary. And I remember looking at those record covers and being like scared, like, what is this? You know, and I still listen to those records to this day. And so kind of through Matt, they had a band with Jeff Andrews, and Jeff was a little bit older too. And he had a car. And so somehow I remember there was I think it was Excruciating Pain, Impetuous Doom, and then Matt Pierce's older brothers. I think they were called several different things, but there was a show at the Pantheon that would have been a House of Pain show on a matinee. And I remember going to that kind of via Jeff. I think it was like Jeff was kind of the one that, like, there's stuff going on in Nashville, you know, outside of Mount Juliet.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, for people that don't know, is about 30 to 40 minutes away.
Yeah, about 30. Yeah, it was about 30. So, and I remember, oh man, this is awesome, you know. And then Pantheon shut down. You know, I mean, maybe went to like maybe 2 or 3 shows. Saw like Buzzkill, I think, on one show. And so after that, I remember somehow, or maybe Jeff told me, oh, they got a new spot. It's Lucy's Record Shop. The House of Pain matinees are going to start there. Blend was our band name before Fingerhutt. That was our band for like 3 shows. And we booked a show with Donnie at the Pantheon. That's right. And then it shut down and the show got canceled. Because I think we played like the 3rd show. We played one of the earlier shows. We played like 3 shows under the name Blend before we changed the name to Fingerhutt. I think it was, oh man, and we played with a band called the Ted Bundys, and the guy, he had a drum machine. It was like it was a 2-piece with a drum machine. And I remember they had a song called Attack of the Killer Zombies or something. And I started getting guitar lessons on Sundays at Rock Block Guitars on Elston.
Oh, just up the block.
So usually what kind of would happen was my dad would take me to go get a guitar lesson. And then he would after he would pick me up for my guitar lesson, he would drop me off at Lucy's. So I would almost go like every Sunday, no matter who was playing.
Your dad was really supportive. I think a clear memory I have, and you were around a lot, but I remember your dad, and one of the only few dads that actually came and helped you load in equipment.
I couldn't even pick it up. I was pretty scrawny, but I couldn't even lift my hand. He's my roadie.
Yeah. That must have been pretty special for you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm more, as, you know, time goes on, and I appreciate that. You know, at the time, you don't have anything to compare it to. So, okay. So once we kind of turned, you know, Mark, Ben, James, and I started playing his Fingerhutt, we would practice at my dad's house in the basement. He would let us practice there. And I've thought about this a lot too, where I think where Lucy's being an all ages place, it gave us something to look forward to, even though maybe we'd play 1 show a month, maybe every other month or every couple of weeks. It gave us a goal to work towards. So that's what kind of made us better musicians versus if we would have not had a place and you're playing cover tunes and you're writing stuff and then you have no outlet for it. I think that was a very integral part of, I guess, my musical journey too, is to have that thing to look forward to and to work towards, to be a part of something else. And it kind of got us out of Mount Juliet, you know, like we would go into Nashville. I mean, at that time I was 15. So that's kind of where Jeff Andrews really came in. He was a little bit older. And so he would drive us all the way. He would drive us to shows, drive us to record stores, check out this band, you know. So he's kind of single-handedly got us all kind of looped into what was going on in Nashville, like exposing us to all these different bands, and bands I listen to this day would be pretty much him. And like how much of a music fan that, you know, he still is, you know, we still talk. the second thing that I think Lucy's, or at least it did for me personally, was seeing other bands playing, original music from out of town and traveling around and that was possible. I think that would be the second thing. Like, there's this band, these guys are living out of this van, driving around playing music every day. I want to do that. That would have been the second big impression beyond just having a goal and being part of a scene and having a show and getting better to perform, is that, wow, this could take you out outside of Nashville. And then when you hear of other bands that are like, well, they went to Europe, like, whoa. So it snowballed from there. It kind of was a pretty big leverage point that stumbled me to Chicago, if you kind of look back at it and if you think about it. And now I've traveled all over the world, playing music.
Did you tour with Fingerhutt?
No, you were just kind of a high school band. And then, everyone kind of started getting different interests. And so it kind of fractured for a while. And then that's when I started playing with Roger and Erik and Jonathan when they were called Fecal Matter. And then Jonathan, I think he got grounded when his mom found out the name. And so they had to change it to High Strung.
Oh.
So then I started jamming with them because Fingerhutt stopped kind of doing anything just to play and to be playing shows at Lucy's or whatever, and Erik and Roger lived down the street. It wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was better than doing nothing. And they were my friends. And so, and then I guess after that, that's when Erik and I really, started hanging out a lot. And kind of everyone else in that circle had a lot of different interests and a lot of different things going on or whatever. But he and I kind of were like, all we want to do is play in a band. We don't want to do any of that other stuff. And we would sit over at his house and just watch Headbangers Ball videos and just talk about, man, we just want to be in a band and tour. And then we would always just come up with stupid band names. Hence how we ended up in a band called Asschapel that ended up touring all over the place. It kind of started from that. Yeah, it's really crazy to think about how big of an impact it had on my life, really. And it was kind of interesting listening to the podcast with Donnie talking about how much shit he did going to city council meetings and all that stuff. I remember him talking about it, but I didn't realize the depth of how much he really did for the scene. And he really, even though I was around all that stuff, I was a kid, and it's crazy to think about.
Did you listen by any chance to the episode of Jeremy and Mike from Stuck It?
I heard some, I had some people, I haven't had a chance to listen to them all, but yeah, I've heard some stories of me barfing on stage and slipping in it.
Well, so Fingerhutt the first show Fingerhutt played was October 10th in 1993 with Meantime and Power Trip. And then the next year in 94, Fingerhutt played 4 times, April, June, August, and November, with Hands of Filth, Red 5, Super Sucker, Skillet Head, Green Machine, Space Pants, Norman Mayer Group, and Brown Cow. And then in 95, you only played once with Bert and Fecal Matter. And then in 96, you come back for a show with the Migraines and Serotonin. And then in 97, you come back again with 2 shows.
97 was probably when we stopped.
But so he did say, and I couldn't place the date, but he said he called it the last Fingerhutt show. And he said that you were on stage and you grew up and your pants fell down at the same time. And you just kept playing.
I've forgot about that, but I think I don't remember the pants falling down, but why not? I'm sure it happened. If someone else remembered it that way, I'm gonna go with it. Because yeah, I do remember barfing and slipping in it, but I don't remember my pants falling down. Wow. Well, I'll own it. I won't deny it.
But the most amazing part of that was that you just kept playing, like the dedication you had. In between Fecal Matter, Royal Fingerhutt, and High Strung, there was also Little Monkey on a Stick.
Yeah, we had Little Monkey on a Stick, Dry Heave, Brown Cow. At one point, I think I was in like 4 bands. I think I was having band practice every night of the week at my dad's house was a different band at one point. Yeah, there were so many attempted bands and bands that never did anything. We would just record, here's our new band.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite show that you remember playing? Could be more.
I'd say some of those Fingerhutt shows, some of those later Fingerhutt shows are pretty. What
was your favorite thing about playing there then?
Just the community, like having a community, and it gave me it gave me a lot of a greater appreciation for punk music as well. Because I was more of a music nerd. I really liked, more complicated music in a way. But, in a way that does get really pretentious and really competitive. Whereas punk music, you didn't have to be that good. You could just write a good song, it was more about the community of it. And I think getting exposed to that was really, I don't know what the word is, very impressionable. Would be that to be a part of something that wasn't a sports team or church or whatever society wants you to be. It was something else that was grassroots, that wasn't part of a mainstream culture, that was organic, and it kind of got me and a lot of my friends outside of our hometown bubble, not just thinking the whole world was Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I think that's what it kind of served for me and a lot of my friends from there. And there was a lot more possible things you could do with community. And there's people in other towns and other countries that do the same thing as that.
Oh, that's another band, Boobyhatch.
Boobyhatch, yeah. So Fingerhutt kind of went different, everyone kind of went different ways. And then I started jamming with Erik and Roger and Jonathan in Fecal Matter, which turned into High Strung. But then Roger and Jonathan were a marching band. And so they were gone every weekend doing marching band. And so Erik and I would still hang out and be like, we don't want to be a marching band. We don't want to play in punk. We don't play in rock bands. We want to play shows. And so that's when he and I really started hanging out a lot more and listening to records and hanging out with Jeff. Jeff is like a musicologist. Like, dude, check out this band. Check out this band. He's like, here's Morbid Angel. And then here's the Sundays. Like, he likes every genre of music. And then he would drive us around everywhere, and so then that's when we kind of started messing around doing Little Monkey on a Stick stuff and just for fun. And then basically then I just, the style of music of High Strung was just not what I wanted to play something heavier. I didn't really want to play kind of straightforward punk. I wanted to play something a little heavier and more challenging. And then I remember seeing Chris Fox playing with Fun Girls and be like, man, I want to play with that guy. That guy's not like, God, like, man. And I remember he and I were hanging out one time. We were like, he was talking about the Melvins and how he wanted to play something heavier. And I said, well, dude, we should do something, or we should jam. And then Donnie was saying he kind of was wanting to play something heavier and want to play bass again. So then the three of us started jamming. And then Erik, he was like, dude, you should come sing for this. And so that's kind of how that all came together. And then I went to college. And then that's when Donnie was just like parenthood. I think it's probably when Griffin was the second kid. Griffin was born probably. And we did a West Coast tour out to and back. And I think that's when Donnie realized like, I got to focus on my family. And then the three of us basically, so Boobyhatch morphed into Asschapel, basically. Erik, Roger, Jonathan, and I lived in a farmhouse in Murfreesboro when we were all going to MTSU at that point. And then we got John Roberson, and Tom George was playing keyboards when we first started. And then we ended up touring all over the place and putting out records. And basically we just got a new bass player and a keyboard. It was Boobyhatch with a different bass player and a keyboard. And Erik and I always just constantly would come up with the worst band names possible. And when Erik, Jonathan,
really the worst band names or the best band names?
Well, we had some we didn't use. So basically, how the Asschapel name came up is when Roger, I think it was Jonathan, Roger, Erik, and I lived in a farmhouse in Murfreesboro, and all went to MTSU, and we had there was a list on the refrigerator. And it had a Sharpie taped to it. And all the people that live there's a bunch of people that hang out there. You know, it was a big just college house outside of MTSU. And we would practice there in like a shack. So anyone that was coming in and out of the kitchen would just write a band name on there. I don't know whatever happened to that list, but there was just the worst band name, just funny band names. And Asschapel was on that list.
So you're going to school, you're going to college, you're practicing. Did you play your first show in Nashville or in Murfreesboro?
Our first show was the Indie, yeah. Probably late 99, early 2000, I would imagine.
And how does a band like that go from playing IndieNet, local Nashville show, to touring the world, which is what?
We're stupid.
And you guys were together for what? 7
years? Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean you were stupid? It sounds like a
you gotta be stupid to jump in a van and drive all over the world.
Oh. Or very young and have a lot of energy.
No, but that's why it was fun, because we were idiots. If we were smart, it would have been boring. We wouldn't have done it. It was just kind of one thing snowballed. It would just be one little opportunity to the next. And you know, at the end of the day, just looking back on it, I think it really stemmed that Erik and I really wanted to be in a touring band like that. That's something we both really wanted to do. We wanted to be in a touring band that put out records, like in all our different incarnations, from Fecal Matter, High Strung, Boobyhatch, you know, Little Monkey on a Stick, and probably a bunch of other band names that we were starting bands every weekend, you know, making tapes and 4-tracks. And so, but it all that kind of led up to Asschapel and as far as what got us out of Nashville, you know. So whereas like Lucy's got us out of Mount Juliet, Asschapel got us out of Nashville. And actually, of all the, you know, people that I met through Asschapel, in a way, got me to Chicago. You know, even when I would tour with Pelican, there would still be people like, you were in Asschapel. There was a show Pelican played. We played in Athens, Greece back 2019. And the guy that picked us up at the airport was at the Asschapel show in 2006. There was always there would be one guy at every show.
So then Asschapel goes on until about 2006 or so.
Yeah. Let's see. We played our last show at the Springwater, April 4th, 2006, I think.
So after so many years of those experiences and touring in a van and seeing the world, what happened? Why did it end?
We were terrible business people, and it was called Asschapel.
You didn't think it was going to go mainstream?
Yeah, it kind of was like, yeah. And, you know, it was just, everyone's life was in chaos, and, you know, graduated college, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm going to move my dad's basement and go on tour my band Asschapel instead of going and getting a job. I wouldn't change it though. I mean, Asschapel played in Bosnia. We played in a bomb shelter in Bosnia.
So somebody repurposed a bomb shelter and put on punk rock shows?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. There wasn't, there was like no lights. Like I remember, and this has been 2006. Yeah, wait, yeah, 2006. And it's like, this was before GPSs were like affordable and cell phones and that kind of stuff. We had a loaner phone that we could use in the case of emergencies, but there was like no street lights and we couldn't read the street signs. And we had a German map trying to navigate. And then we found the town and there's just like no street lights. It's just dark. We had to just try to ask people. And someone told us it was next to it was a place called Magic with a K. And then we would see some people, like we saw a guy walking around like, hey, do you speak English? We're looking for a place called Magic. We're looking for Magic. And he goes, it's by the post office. And that's all we could get out of him. So then we kept driving around and then there were some girls and we're like, hey, we're looking for the post office by a place called Magic. And they just started running.
Oh.
And then we turned the corner and there was the only place open. It was like all lit up. Everywhere else was dark. And it was the only thing open in the whole town. It was called, I think, Bangaluka. I probably can't say it right. Banjaluka or something like it's Bankaju. What? I don't know. But anyway, it was a terrible show. My amp broke. It was an awful show. We got lost and I think it took us 12 hours to get there.
Oh,
it was not a good show. We did not put on a good show at all.
Were there people there though?
Yeah. And then a kid came up to me and was like, you guys aren't as good as you are on record.
Oh, jeez.
The loaner amp I had sounded like a television with white noise on it. Like it just like the amp I had broke. And then I had a loaner amp. And when I turned it on, it was just like, when I played, I might as well just had a TV with white noise, just turning it on and off.
So, okay. So I have to ask, because you're done with that show. Where do you stay that night?
That was actually what was really cool about that experience. So I remember we were back at the van. It was a little shady too, because there was nothing else going on in this town. So it wasn't just punk kids. There was other dudes smoking cigarettes just kind of in the shadows and stuff. And I remember we loaded our van and we were looking at a map about which way we should go the next day because we were driving all the way down the Balkans, all the way down to Athens, Greece. And so I think we were going to go to Macedonia the next day. And we were looking at the map and the promoter happened to hear us talking about which highway we were going to take. And he's like, don't go that way. That's Kosovo. But we couldn't tell because it was a German map. He's like, you need to go take this highway all the way around. So it added all this time. He's like, you'll get robbed if you go that way. And we're like, okay. And then there's like, but you can come stay with us at this flat and we'll cook up a bunch of food for you guys. So we went and we stayed at this just apartment building and with these people that were friends of the promoter, the guy that did the show. And they were so generous, like cooked and you need beer or whatever. And we're just like hanging out in this small apartment. And there was this one guy I talked to and he was just talking about, man, it's so awesome. You guys came here. He's like, no bands will come here. He's like, it's really awesome. He was like, after the war, he's like, no one had jobs. Everything was just, everyone was scraping by. And he was like, I got lucky and I got a good job. And so we had no scene. We had no nothing. And he said, well, what I did, he's like, I went and bought some music equipment. He's like, I bought like a, cheap bass amp, a bass, a guitar amp, and some drums and a little PA. And when they put it in the basement of that building, he's like, every weekend, people would just come play Ramones songs or whatever. And that was their scene. That, I don't know, there was something about talking to that guy that was really like, wow. And he's like, all the gear got destroyed, but there was nothing else going on in that town. Like
he created a little bit of a community. It sounds like
he was like the Donnie of that town.
Yeah.
Bosnian guy.
I got a regular job, but I'm going to buy all this equipment.
Yeah, and it was like the basement of an apartment building. And they would just on the weekends, they would all just go make noise and take turns, drink beer and someone I learned this song, and they would just all share the same equipment.
So Asschapel is done. And then what happens?
Yeah, Asschapel was done. Basically, it was just, everyone was broke, you know, and it just really stopped being fun. And then kind of looking back on Asschapel, I kind of maybe even personally took it for granted some, you know. I didn't realize how special of a band that was at the time. Now that I'm older, I really feel like we could have done a lot more. Yeah, it's because people to this day still talk about that band or recognize me from that band. Even you know, man, we kind of screwed that up. Like we could have done a lot more shit. But you know, that's the way it goes. So anyway, I was just real restless at the time. And after that tour, I went and volunteered in New Orleans that was the summer after Katrina. So I went and volunteered there for a couple weeks, and that was a pretty life-changing experience. Sometimes I don't even know for the good. That could be a whole other podcast in itself.
Could you, I mean, you just made a pretty big statement, right? Can you just touch on that just briefly, like what made it a negative experience?
Just the dysfunction of like society and government, and even the nonprofits were corrupt. That's, I think, what really was. After that, I have a hard time donating to organizations because I saw how much of it was just stolen. Just to, you know, from insurance companies, just to screwing people out of the money, to the government, to the organizations that were supposed to be helping people, putting volunteers who had their, you know, their hearts to come put them in dangerous situations, toxic situations, just to raise money to make their payroll.
How long were you there?
I was there 6 weeks. It really changed my perspective.
Is that something you wanted to do for a living? Is that why you went down there? Did you want to get involved in that kind of non-profit work?
Well, my dad and I would go there every year. After I turned 21, my dad's like, we need to go to New Orleans. So up until he passed away, we would almost go to New Orleans like once a year. Even after I moved to Chicago, I'd go fly down there and meet him, and we just go bar hopping in the French Quarter, you know. So I just always had a real affinity for that city. And then after when the storm hit, I actually got bit by a spider. I got bit by a spider that was in my pants, and my foot got really infected, and I couldn't even wear a shoe, and I couldn't work. And I was sitting at home with an infected foot watching all that Katrina footage. And so that's when I was like, man, I want to, and then kind of thinking, I'm in a band called Asschapel. Like, I want to help. I want to do something that has some substance, you know. I want to, you know, I guess that's where, I don't know, do something that has some more meaning and then it's not so self-absorbed, I guess.
Can I just stop you for just a second and just say, it's from you describing the band and the fact that there are still people out there that remember it. I mean, you have to know you brought a lot of joy to other people's lives by playing in that band, right? I mean, well, I get that you think it might be self-serving because you're on stage and everybody's watching you and you're the one playing, but you have to look at it the other way. Like, people really enjoyed that. You gave them something, you gave them an experience that they enjoyed.
Well, yeah, well, that's kind of where I was getting at. So after my whole New Orleans experience, that's kind of where I realized I just need to get back to playing music.
There you go.
I don't have any business doing this, you know.
Right.
I just need to. So it kind of took that to realize that, yeah, I need to be playing music. So kind of what happened was I went down to volunteer there only like 2 weeks, and I ended up getting hired by the nonprofit. And so, because I still had the band van, so I could take volunteers around to all the sites, the cleanup sites, and then once I got hired, I saw what was going on behind the scenes, and I was like, they're not helping anybody. They're just making this is a profiteering organization. And so I took the money that I made and I decided to travel across country by myself and go see friends and family. So I pretty much drove from New Orleans to San Francisco and back in like 6 weeks. Then when I came back, then I was working because then I was in debt. I was in debt. So pretty much tried to get another band going, and I was working like 3 or 4 jobs to pay off all my credit card debt around like 2007. That was pretty miserable. And my friend here in Chicago, who's this guy named Sanford Parker, I had met at an Asschapel show in 2005 in Milwaukee. And he and I were talking about doing a project, and I was thinking about maybe moving to Atlanta at the time, just to get out of Nashville. I lived there my whole life, turned 30, all my band's falling apart, and I just needed a change. And he's like, no, dude, come up to Chicago, check it out. I probably find you a place to live and a place to work. I was like, can I bring my dog? He's like, sure. So basically that's when I moved up here on a whim. Yeah. And I'm still here 14 years later. So it all kind of stemmed from all those events of like 2006.
And did you form a band when you went to Chicago?
Yeah, I tried to get a band going. And it didn't. It kind of, the first year it was kind of tough. And then I started a band called the Swan King that I finally this guy Jamie Dreyer, he used to play in a band called Planes Mistaken for Stars. And that's how I met the Pelican guys. We practiced next door to them. And then we played a show with them, and then I met all of them. And then their guitar player kind of went on hiatus, and they asked me to kind of fill in. And then 10 years later, it's like he finally came back.
That's how you stopped playing with Pelican, is because
well, not necessarily. The pandemic kind of was, it was kind of a mutual decision for me to leave, but it was mainly the pandemic, and I just needed to change. I didn't really, and most of the stuff, I just didn't really want to tour internationally. And a lot of the stuff that was booked was like booked in 2019 and kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I don't know, having a wife and a kid in the house and hearing bands getting stranded with COVID rules. And so, and it kind of just stopped being fun. And I just needed a change. And it was kind of a mutual decision. It was time for me to go. And I'm really glad that their old guy came back, because I watched some video, like a live stream they did, and they sounded great. They sounded awesome. And I was like, that's what needed to happen. And I'm really thankful for all the stuff I got to do with those guys, and thought it was time to go. I'm more interested in maybe playing music domestically and touring domestically. I don't really want to tour internationally for the time being, unless it's like quit your day job money. And it was kind of a long distance situation too. So and I wanted to be in a band where everyone lives in the same town, and we meet every week. We rehearse, we write songs, and hang out. And that wasn't possible with that band.
And so in between then and now, you have a new band.
Yeah, that my daughter named.
Your 5-year-old, 6-year-old?
Well, she was 5 when she named it. Yeah, so our band was named by a 5-year-old. Band names are hard, and I was like, it's not taken.
How did she name? What did she say? How did that come about?
So I was just sitting in my room here listening to records, and she just busted in with a toy sword and just said, "Ready for death," and started attacking me. I was like, "Wait, is that sounds like a band name? Is that taken?" And I just started Googling it. And then the guys I'm jamming with now, we had just kind of, the singer and I were making demos on, like, with a drum machine and writing some songs. And well, you know what? We'd already found the drummer at that point. That's right. So, but yeah, the band came together really, really organically and really, really well. And it's been really fun, refreshing thing to be a part of. Yeah.
And it seems like you've gone back to your roots almost with this band.
Yeah. I kind of realized like a lot of the soul searching in the pandemic, that things are going to be the same, and I'm just going to have to start over. I've been fighting starting over. It's so kind of start back where I was about 14 and 15 and see where it goes from there.
You're talking about musically too?
Yeah. The style is definitely like the band that I probably would wanted to be in 14 or 15 years old, but wasn't good enough to do it, at 44 years old.
All right, well, that's all I have. Unless, is there something that you wanted to touch on that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, this is kind of heavy. That's kind of heavier part. It's kind of strange, and I think about it a lot. So, when my dad was sick, was when my daughter was like, she was about 6 months old when he really got sick. 5 months old, and I was trying to being a new dad and coming back and forth to Nashville and trying to catch up and talk with doctors and coming back and, and then when it was just kind of, he's got to go into hospice. This is, he's not going to get better. And I'd come down indefinitely to Nashville and I was, staying with him, and it was writing was on the wall. And then they had the social worker come and then they were going to say, hey, we can have someone come stay. Well, so yeah. And also too, I'm coming back I got a newborn at home, and so I was like, well, I guess he's going to have to go into hospice, and there's two available, and there's one in Madison and then there's one in Nashville. And we're waiting for a bed to open up. And I was like, okay. Then they were going to send him to the one in Madison. I was like, okay, all right, we got him a bed. And they're like, oh, wait, but you're going to have to, I think it was like, you're going to have to wait another week, or you're going to have to wait. There was a bed opening up, but it was like, and then all of a sudden, I guess someone passed away. And like, oh, the one in Nashville's open. It came open last minute, like total last minute. I was like, okay. Here's the address. My neighbors had that lived by him. They had to like help carry him out of the house and get him into the car. And, I put in the address to the hospice center downtown. And then, I pull off Charlotte and get him all situated. And, he was weird. He was kind of lucid there for a couple of days, or I was like, I almost thought he was going to get better. It was real weird. And, and then he, after about the second or third day, he kind of just went unconscious, and that was, was just it. And then they kept him comfortable and he passed. But anyway, once I realized, he went unconscious, it was like, and I was staying in a cot kind of next to him. And I was like, well, I guess I'll go kind of, I kind of didn't realize where I was. And it was a really, really nice day. So I got out and I started walking. And it was right there at 18th and Church.
Oh my God.
I started walking and I look, I'm like, shit, I'm right here at Lucy's, and I could see, like, and I was born at Baptist Hospital, and I could see where I was born, and then I could see where my dad's, dying. And I could see where Lucy's record shop is, and where Asschapel, we recorded all our records. And I don't know, it's so strange. And I think about it often, just how strange life is. Like, so I don't know. I don't know what that meant. But it's like, and it was a whim that he ended up there. It's a last minute. And it just and it was a gorgeous day. It was a beautiful day. And I just remember standing there on the corner like, wow, I don't know, just like that. This is where I came into the earth, was that hospital right there. And, where I got my first guitar lessons, rock block, and played my first shows and recorded my first records. And yeah. So I don't know I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, your dad was with you every step of the way and every step of that journey.
Yeah, he's really, really supportive of me playing music. Yeah, he really was. And he was really proud of me. And that was what was really kind of, getting that Pelican gig and actually getting paid money for making a dime, and it was just, he was really proud of me for that. So, yeah, not that money, money, music, no, it's not why you do it, but still, it meant something to him. It's not why I did it. And I don't know.
Well, he wanted you to have a good, comfortable, he didn't want you to struggle, I'm sure, right? And musicians are known to struggle.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, he was so supportive. I mean, he turned his whole house into a clubhouse after my parents split up,
What I think of when you tell that story is he was there when you were born. He was there to, help you fulfill your dreams and support the thing that you were so passionate about. And it's the circle of life, right? And there you were with him. You were there to support him. And the fact that all happened within a certain amount of a couple of square blocks is just pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, I just take it as I'm trying to be the best dad I can to my daughter, That's all I feel like I can do.
Thanks again for listening. This episode is dedicated with love to the memory of Erik Holcombe and Bill Thomas. Dallas and his band Ready for Death have a new record coming out on Transition Lost Records on December 9th, 2022, and will be playing the Lucy's Record Shop anniversary show on Sunday, September 18th at Dark Matter in Nashville. The link to pre-save and pre-order the new Ready for Death record is in the episode notes and at lucysrecordshop.com. You can follow Ready for Death on Instagram at ReadyForDeath666, on Twitter at ReadyForDeath85, and on Facebook at Ready for Death Band. You can follow this show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Lucy's Record Shop. And please email me directly at Mary@Lucy's Record Shop with any thoughts or any feedback that you have. And also, if you have a minute, please take the time to share the show with a friend and drop us a rating or a review. Many thanks to Michael Eads for his time and for the use of his studio. And thanks to Joe Riley for digitizing all the Fingerhutt music. Links to full versions of the songs used in this episode can be found in the episode notes and at lucysrecordshop.com. This show is brought to you by Give 40 The Finger Productions and We Own This Town, a podcast network of original entertainment and documentary content. You can find more info at their official site at weownthistown.net and follow along at We Own This Town on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.